My son and I read this children's book series about feral cats. They're called the Warrior Cats books, and there's a billion of them, and he reads them, and sometimes I read them to him. And so I've read a bunch of these books now, and I have a strange claim to make, which is that the theology of the Warrior Cats books is more compelling to me, this is an opinion, than like any of the major world religions. And I'm not making a joke. Sincerely, I think that the spiritual worldview of the Warrior Cats series, specifically its ancestor theology, more accurately reflects how people, communities, and societies actually work than the dominant theological frameworks most of us grew up with. So, let's talk about it. So before we talk about cats, we're going to talk about why human beings invent gods. If you think that God is a thing that exists outside of people and is an external force that is not contained only inside of people but also exists elsewhere, this conversation will not totally be for you, but hopefully you'll find it interesting anyway. So there's a bunch of reasons that we invent gods, and one of them is that non-existence is unthinkable, and not metaphorically. Once you exist, you have a self, and the only self you have ever known is the self that exists. And also, once you have other people you love, your experience of the world is built around the fact that you and they are here. The idea of then not being there is not something that your mind is going to be good at processing. Like, I can say, I will no longer exist, but that doesn't make sense, because where is the I in that? Okay, here's a better way. If you imagine a room without you in it, you aren't really imagining a room without you in it, because you are in the room imagining. There's a perspective from which you are imagining the room without you, but there are eyes seeing the room, and that's still you. You can't really imagine your own non-existence, because imagination requires you to be there doing the imagining. And when you turn this onto larger loss and grief, people you love, the people who made you and who are you in some ways. The idea that your mother or your best friend or your child can stop, that the universe continues and they're just nowhere, that is like one of the most psychologically destabilizing thing that a conscious being has to confront. I think this is one of the reasons why we create God and also gods. We build stories that say the stopping isn't real, or at least it isn't total. Something persists, something continues. It's a psychological problem that is solved in part by creating God, but more than that, creating afterlives. I feel like the question isn't whether we need protection from the terror of non-existence. I think that we do. The question is, like, which ones do we choose, and what are the qualities of them that we think are important in that decision? And one of those qualities is, like, is it honest? That's for me. That's not for everybody. But, like, for me, it's like, does it seem reflective of reality? There are other reasons why we have religion and gods, but that's a big one. But to talk about more, let's talk about how we usually do it these days. But before we get any deeper, we are going to get deeper, I want to tell you about our sponsor, kind of. It's not really a sponsor because I'm not getting paid, but it feels like a sponsor because I'd like to let you know. The basic idea is that you're going to buy underwear and you're going to buy socks. You might as well buy them in a way that's a delight to you and that makes the world a better place. And I'm not kidding when I say that the products are very good. Here's some reviews for our underwear. Actual best investment of my life. Most comfortable undies ever. The most comfortable underwear I have ever worn. Buy if you love comfort. Really great underwear. Can you believe that first one? Actual best investment of my life? Kaylin gets excited every time she remembers a pair is on the way. That review just from 4 days ago. And look, maybe you were once signed up for the Awesome Socks Club, but you canceled because we make it very easy to cancel because you had enough socks, but now you need more. Well, now's a good time to sign back up because you will get your first pair 50% off if you use the coupon code SHAREAPAIR. And maybe you don't need that pair and you could share it. You can give it to a friend as a present. It might be their birthday, or you might just want to tell them that you were thinking of them. There's a link in the description. Good.store. Use the coupon code SHAREAPAIR. Free shipping. You can cancel anytime. It's the best. And all the profit goes to charity. And now back to the weird cat thoughts that I had. The appeal and the problem of monotheism. So monotheism offers this very clean and compelling answer to these questions, including other ones like why are things the way that they are, and please protect me from the vagaries of everything. So God is like this all-powerful being, force, presence, person, I don't know. And God, I think the God that is most present around me in my culture is a guy who has a plan. The suffering you experience is not meaningless. It is part of a bigger thing. And when you die, you don't stop existing. You go somewhere. And that is also part of, like, you may have suffered here, but that is just a blink compared to the eternity you're going to experience in the elsewhere. And whether you go to the good place, I guess, is mostly made by God. I don't really know. Is that how it works? But when you die, you don't stop existing. You in some way continue. And that's also true of the ones that you love. And this is enormously attractive. It addresses the fear of non-existence. You will persist forever. It addresses the chaos of suffering. There is a reason for it. It addresses the unpleasantness of suffering. You may suffer now, but you will not for eternity. This will be a blink. Don't worry about it. And it also, we haven't talked about this yet, but it's dealing with the loneliness of consciousness. There is someone who is watching and who cares and who's got it handled. Even when you're alone, even when you're broken, even when you're lost, there's somebody who's got this figured out. So I get why billions of people find this very compelling. I find it compelling. It's also organizing. It gives structure to experience. It makes unbearable things more bearable. But it's got problems, and we've heard of the problems. Like the first one, of course, is the problem of suffering, which is an old critique of monotheism, and nobody has solved it. If God is all-powerful and all-good, why on earth would suffering be a thing? So the various formulations of this go back a long way. Like, if he can stop it and won't, he's cruel. If he wants to stop it and can't, he's not all-powerful. And if he can and wants to, then why hasn't he? And this is a problem that I think has gotten worse over time. The more we learn about the causes of suffering, the more we discovered that many of them are actually preventable. Childhood cancer is not a mysterious act of divine will. This is a biological process that we increasingly understand and can do something about. Poverty is in many ways a policy outcome. The suffering that was once attributed to God's plan keeps turning out to be something that we can fix if we organize ourselves in certain ways. So either God is choosing to not fix things, which raises some pretty uncomfortable questions about his character, or the framework just doesn't hold. Now, there are, of course, other problems with monotheism, but I'm going to hit you with two that I personally feel that are like my big ones. Number one, God, as culturally imagined, is hiding. He does not show up. He does not manifest. He's all-powerful. He could make me believe. He could provide tangible, verifiable evidence of his existence. And this creates like a double bind for me. I know it doesn't for everybody. People are like, no, he's asking you. But I'm like, okay, that seems awfully convenient. Either I have to believe that God is constantly testing me by refusing to show me to himself, which doesn't seem nice, or I have to accept that the most rational conclusion is either that God exists or that he doesn't want me to believe in him, which, if he is all-powerful, I should do what he wants, which is to not believe in him. He's doing a very good job of not being detectable. And now I think the big defense here is the free will defense that says, like, God hides so that belief remains a choice rather than a compulsion. But why is that among God's priorities? Why is that important for a being who supposedly wants a relationship with his creation? Like, imagine a parent who refuses to let their child see them ever so that they know that the child's love will be freely chosen. That's bad parenting. We would not call that good parenting. And then my other big reason why I am, in fact, atheist and not agnostic. When I say atheist, I mostly mean that I do not believe in the God that has been presented to me by my culture. Not, I don't think that there could be anything else. Like, I'm agnostic as far as it comes to, like, I don't know the structure of the universe and neither does anybody. Like, yeah, if God is like a tentacled spider beast that pushed a button to start the simulation, I guess that's not what I'm being asked to believe. The story I'm being asked to believe, this is the reason why I'm an atheist, is just too good at, like, being a technology. It is too good at solving the fundamental hard problems of being humans, almost as if it was created in order to deal with those things. As an example, there is the structural critique of monotheism, which is the observation that monotheism, particularly like the moralizing, all-seeing version of God, tends to emerge kind of over and over again in large hierarchical post-agricultural societies. So like big gods who monitor behavior and punish wrongdoing, they appear after societies become complex, not before. They seem to be a technology for maintaining cooperation among strangers at scale, which does not mean that it's wrong necessarily, but it is another way in which it's like, oh, it seems as if people choose the spirituality that best serves their society. If not choose, then it is selected for in some way, as any other cultural idea would be selected for, because it's useful and it's providing value and it's helping the society continue to thrive and survive. A big monotheistic God definitely seems to me like a force that would allow humans to operate more like a superorganism and thus be more successful. And we do operate that way, and I think that's very cool. I don't have a problem with it, but it does make me feel like it is helping to solve an organizational problem rather than like describing reality, or describing a metaphorical reality. I don't even think it's particularly good at describing a metaphorical reality. And so, these cats. For those who have not read this series, you definitely don't need to have read the series to enjoy this video. I'm not going to spoil, I am going to spoil some things. There's going to be some spoilers in here. It's by Aaron Hunter, who is a bunch of different people. Aaron Hunter is not one person. It is a children's book series. I don't know how I'd love to find out. If Aaron Hunter or whoever is in charge of the Aaron Hunter brand would like to talk to me, I will devour your brains. I'm sure that's not just one person, but like, I want to know everything about how these books are made. These books are about clans of feral cats that live in the wild. I feel like it's England. I don't know why I feel that way. The cats have their own culture and their own social structures, their own code of laws, which is called the Warrior Code, which is never particularly well fleshed out, but they also have their own theology, which is more well fleshed out. That theology centers on StarClan. So there's like, in the books, 4 major clans. And then there's also StarClan, the 5th clan, which is where cats go when they die, if they lived honorably. StarClan cats metaphysically exist inside of a spiritual realm, and they really do exist. They can appear to living cats in dreams. They send omens and they send prophecies to medicine cats. There's medicine cats. When a new leader takes power in a clan, that leader travels to a sacred site, which changes throughout the books don't worry about it. There are 9 StarClan cats who then appear to them, and each of them grants them a life. These cats then, like, not every cat has 9 lives in the Warriors universe, but the leaders do. This is not like faith-based, though there are cats who don't believe in StarClan, which is interesting because they have some real and obvious impacts on the world, but it's possible to not believe in them. It's very unusual. Anyway, it's also fine to not believe in them. Like the Mothwing, we don't need to get into it. We don't need to. StarClan does not seem to mind when cats don't believe in them. But the 9 lives are a real thing. Like, those cats can be killed and can come back. Though, I could see if you were an unbeliever being like, really? Is that, or did they just get better? Because there are situations where cats lose several lives at a time. We won't get into details there because, man, that's a bad scene. But other cats see this happen. And like, when you're on your last life, it's a different thing. And when you die differently. So the existence of StarClan is not really a matter of belief for these cats. It's a matter of observable fact. But that's the world of the books, right? Like, StarClan could not actually exist in our universe as our universe exists. But they do for the cats in the books and the universe and the magic system of the books. But this is the thing I love about it. StarClan is not God, and the cats of StarClan are explicitly not all-powerful, though many of the cats on Earth do not understand that because ability to communicate is not fast and good. So they don't understand everything that StarClan is dealing with, and they're like, why won't StarClan fix this? But the reason is because StarClan can't. They are not all-powerful. They can sometimes catch glimpses of the future. They can't see all of the future. They can send warnings. They can't force anyone to do anything, though. They can't force anyone to listen. They can't stop a storm from happening, though they maybe have some control over how storms happen. They can't prevent suffering. They cannot override free will. They can disagree with each other inside of StarClan. StarClan is real, it's powerful, but it's also limited. They don't hide. They show up as much as they can, and they give, because if they could show up more, they would. They want to help. But ultimately, you have to make your own choices and face your own consequences. And this is what I find compelling, because StarClan is actually a good metaphor for what it's like to be a person or cat. We have actual ancestors. Every word that I am saying right now was created by groups of humans who were not the group of humans who are alive right now. These are not new words. StarClan is. StarClan's a new word. But for the most part, these are not new words. We are using the tools that were created by our ancestors to survive. And words are one of those tools, and stories are one of those tools. Your grandparents, the people who built the cultures and institutions you live inside of, think about what they actually do for you. They give us real tools. The language we speak, the values we hold, the knowledge we carry, the institutions we participate in, all of that was built by people who are dead. And their impact on your life is not metaphorical. Their impact is tangible and ongoing, and it's real, and they are not all powerful, but they are having an impact on our lives right now. They didn't know the challenges I was going to face as a person, but they supplied me with tools. So an example, if you are in conflict with someone that you care about, and you bite your tongue instead of saying the cruelest thing you could say, where did that come from? Did that come from your grandmother? Did it come from your mother? Maybe your father told you a story about a time he didn't bite his tongue and he lost a friend. That restraint is a dead person's gift to you, and that's not metaphorical. That's a real tool that was passed down. And so StarClan could not exist physically in our world, obviously. You can't have a cat with 9 lives. You can't have dead cats in the sky. I don't know, are they in the sky? They travel, though. Like, they have to physically move, which I love because it keeps the mystery open, you know? But as a metaphor for the actual situation we find ourselves in, this is much better than monotheism. Like, what is God a metaphor for? It doesn't feel as obvious. Now, maybe God is a metaphor for humanity. It's a metaphor for the nation or for the group, but it's not a good one because the nation isn't all powerful, because the nation isn't all benevolent. I don't mean like the nation, like America. I mean like a grouping of humans, you know, the culture, the humanity. Like, is it that? It's not. It's like not a good metaphor for it. I could allow that there might be a better metaphor than StarClan. But monotheism isn't it. With an ancestor theology, your ancestors can't save you from everything. They couldn't foresee every challenge you would face. They cannot control the weather. They cannot make your pain go away. The tools that they give you sometimes don't fit the problems that you have. But they are real tools, and they often work, and you yourself are developing new tools that you will pass on. New institutions, new words. Ancestors are real. And they have real impacts on us now. And so it makes sense that if you're going to have a system for handling the terrors of existence, that the one that I would want would be the one that's most reflective of actual reality. That's the best metaphorical telling of the actual situation that we find ourselves in. It's a reflection of reality. And I'm always looking for reflections of reality. Now, it is a reflection. Like, they did die. Their consciousness ended. They are not walking around with us. They cannot speak into our dreams. They cannot make a tree fall in the right place to make it so that there's a new gathering place. But that isn't quite the same thing as them not being here anymore, because are humans individuals or are we a collective? Because their impact continues. The things that they built, that they carried, the love that they expressed, all of that persists in you and in our society, even long after they are forgotten. But that's what I mean when I say that the warrior cat's theology reflects how societies actually function. A society is an emergent entity. It is more than the sum of its individual members. It contains properties of people who are long dead. The values of your culture were shaped by people who lived centuries ago. The language that you think in and that you share ideas in was built over millennia. You are, in a very real sense, being guided by the dead. Not mystically. Actually. And if that's true, and I think it is, that an ancestor theology isn't so much a fiction. It's an honest description of reality. It's at least a metaphor that is reflecting the actual situation. But what if there was like more to it than that? Here's where the warrior cat's theology gets more interesting to me, and also maybe more honest, because not all ancestors are good. In the warrior's universe, cats who lived cruel or treacherous lives, this is a spoiler, but they do not go to StarClan. They go to the dark forest, to the place of no stars. It is a grim, prayless wasteland where evil cats persist after death, and they don't just sit there. They scheme and they recruit. I'm not going to tell you how dramatic this gets. I think this is kind of theologically brilliant. It reflects something true that a lot of ancestor theologies just kind of gloss over. The legacy of the dead is not uniformly good. Your ancestors give you language. They also put in that language their prejudices. They build institutions, and some of those institutions are engines of suffering. The cultural inheritance you carry includes wisdom, and it also includes cruelty. I hope that the wisdom vastly outweighs cruelty, but perhaps it does not. Some of what the dead leave you is a gift. Some of it is a poison that it takes a long time to clean our world of. An honest theology accounts for that. Monotheism struggles here, because if God is all good, why are so many of his people not? Why did he build a world where evil persists across generations, where we can build evil not just into our institutions, but into the institutions that profess to support God, to be tools of God. This messier ancestor theology allows for all of this. It's not as like beautiful and freeing and full of love and like giving you a feeling of being connected and really inside of a structure that makes a lot of sense. It doesn't give you that. It's still chaotic, but at least it has a way of dealing with the problem of evil. Of course, the ancestor community contains darkness. Of course, some of what was passed down is harmful. Dead people, get this, we're people. And people are complicated, and their legacy is complicated, and some of them suck so bad. You don't get to inherit only the good. So I can't believe I'm talking about warrior cats like this, but in warrior cats, the dark forest isn't just a passive repository of evil. It is active. The darkness your ancestors left you doesn't just sit there, it acts. It trains you in patterns of thinking and behavior that feel powerful but lead to destruction. And that's a pretty good metaphor for intergenerational trauma and toxic cultural inheritance. So another spoiler here, you got to get pretty deep in to be where we are now, but in the warrior cats lore, StarClan cats don't exist forever. You know that movie from Disney that was very cute and sad about dead people? Luca? No, that's a different one. Dead People Disney. Roughly 70 deaths have been reported at Walt Disney World since the 1971 opening. That's not what I mean. Movie. Dead People Disney movie. Coco. It's Coco. It's like Coco. StarClan cats don't exist forever. If they are forgotten, if no living cat remembers them, if no one tells their stories, they fade. They start to become transparent. Eventually, they just disappear. They're gone now. They're not dead because they were already dead, but they are now gone. And there is a gone, but there being a transition between being alive and being gone is protective. It is psychologically protective. In my understanding of the universe, I don't get protection from that, but I can look at this as a metaphor. There are these ways in which I last forever until I'm eventually forgotten, but that doesn't mean that there are no impacts forever. I think everybody affects the world some and nobody affects it alone. I think that this is a really nice idea. It means that the afterlife is conditional. And there's a difference between being remembered and being loved and your impact still existing. There's no guaranteed eternity of existence. Your continued existence after death depends on whether the living remember you. But this is like a nice idea. And it is also not abrupt. Like it's not like the last person dies and then you vanish. Fading is like an honest version of eternity. It says that you continue after death, but like the amount that you continue fades over time. Really what that fading is, and this is not like the warrior cats theology, but really what that fading is dilution. I think this is how ancestral influence works. We aren't just passive recipients of what the dead left us. We're the ones that keep them alive with which things we choose to keep alive. Will we keep using the tools that they gave us, or will we invent new ones, and how will that get diluted over time? And this is like absolutely not how the monotheism I am surrounded by works at all. Right? In the warrior cats, this is so weird that I keep saying the warrior cats, but in the warrior cats, the living don't just receive from StarClan, they sustain StarClan. They remember them by telling stories, and they honor their ancestors, and the living keep the dead alive. And this reciprocal relationship between the living and the dead is something that ancestor theologies around the world actually share. It's something that monotheism largely lacks. In monotheism, God doesn't need you to remember him, and the dead people don't need you to remember them. They're just up there living in eternity forever. That's not reflective of humanity or societies or cultures. But the warrior cat's theology is. Why do I feel more compelled by these cat gods than the gods of my ancestors? Part of the reason is that none of this is unique to warrior cats. Ancestor theologies are among the oldest and most widespread forms of human spirituality. Ancestor theologies are absolutely everywhere, and this makes perfect sense to me because one of the things that we're trying to protect against is the terror of non-existence and things that have always existed for us, like our parents, in those moments when they stop existing. We're protecting ourselves against that by honoring and recognizing the contribution that we are carrying forward and the protection that they have given us. All of these traditions share a theology built on an observable reality. Your ancestors did build the world you live in. They do continue to influence you. They used to build the literal homes that you would live inside of. And their legacy is a mixture of wisdom and darkness, and they will fade from memory if no one carries their stories forward, and no matter what, they will eventually fade completely, but it's not a binary, it's a gradual dilution of their impact on the world. And these traditions didn't need an all-powerful, all-knowing God to explain the world because they were working from the world itself, from their observations of reality. They looked at how societies actually function, how the dead shape the living, and how the past persists, and they built theologies that describe that process. And they are, I think, understood metaphysically to be real in those cultures. But if I'm looking for, stories that do this work well, this is just a more compelling story to me than the God thing, which just doesn't seem to be a very good metaphor for anything. But as we talked about earlier, maybe the monotheism thing isn't about a good metaphor that reflects reality. Maybe it's about a social tool, a technology that does something else. So why does monotheism actually dominate? Well, if ancestor theologies are more reflective of how people and societies actually work, then why did most of the world end up with variations on the one powerful God? So, not an expert, really. It's a video about cat theology, but from what little I have gleaned, it seems like small societies, hunter-gatherer bands, early agricultural villages, they tend to have gods that are limited and local and not primarily concerned with morality. And when I say limited, I mean they're not all powerful. Their theologies look more like ancestor theologies, powerful beings with real but constrained abilities, embedded in the community, not standing outside of it, and oftentimes sprung from the community. Not always, but sometimes. But when societies grow past a certain size, when you need hundreds of thousands or millions of strangers cooperating, following laws, paying taxes, not cheating on each other, you need a different kind of theology. The technology has to change. You need a God who sees everything and judges everything and enforces rules universally. You need an all-powerful moral enforcer. And if you don't have it, maybe your society can't persist as well or at all. And so you get monotheism because maybe you can't have that kind of society without monotheism. And so the reason we have it is not because it's a good metaphor for the reality that we exist in, it's because it's solving an organizational problem that otherwise maybe cannot be solved easily. And now, over the last 100, 200 years, we're trying to figure out how to solve that problem. It's so easy to forget what babies we are when it comes to the knowledge that there's a bunch of galaxies. That's 100 years old. There are people alive today, I think, who were born, before we knew there were other galaxies. That's a big metaphysical problem, and it's a big challenge to monotheism. I didn't talk about that one. That's another problem that monotheism has. Why did you create all these galaxies, God? I feel like, as with all technologies, it has trade-offs, and it has certain situations where it works better and situations where it doesn't work as well. I will attempt to now state plainly the trade-off. Monotheism gains scale, but it loses honesty. Ancestor theologies gain honesty, but they don't scale well. This is wild. Theologians, come at me. I do want to say this is not anywhere near my area of expertise, and it is a video about cats, about cat books. But yeah, an all-seeing God is just really good for getting millions of strangers to be together. But the price of that tool feels like a theology that is not good at even metaphorically representing reality. Just riddled with contradictions that I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's doing a good job of dealing with, the problem of evil, the problem of suffering, divine hiddenness, the obvious preventable nature of suffering, not just all of the other star systems, all of the other galaxies full of star systems in an apparently infinite field of physics that goes on forever that we cannot see the end of. We can see an end of, but only because the light has a speed. God, why did you make light have a speed? And so what I see is that people keep changing the definition of what God is until God is a very vague thing that is infinite something. And that's fine, but it's not what's in the book. And so when I say I'm an atheist, I don't mean that I don't think there could be no feature of the universe that might contain consciousness, or I don't know. It feels very unlikely that it will have any would care about us or have impact on our lives. But I said the word unlikely there, right? So I'm not saying that that's not a thing that I'm saying I'm an atheist and that the God that I have been taught, the God of my culture, I know that that's not real. It's too useful, and it's the theology is too full of holes. I'm sorry. Was this supposed to be a video about my personal atheism? Or was it a video about the theology of warrior cats? But look, let me say a sentence. Ancestor theology governing an empire. Like, you can't really imagine it. It's like not there. And so like it makes sense as we moved to different forms of society, we would lose certain theologies. And the question for me is, what's the next one? What's the next tool that we use? What's the better tool for dealing with like the psychological horror of reality? And then on top of that, how do we have a tool that also doesn't cause society to crumble? Clearly, monotheism had something to do with their being able to be these large-scale societies. So if we remove it, does that mean that we can no longer have them? I don't know. Does it matter if it's not true? It doesn't matter if it's not reflective of reality, even metaphorically? Because the fact that monotheism, like, won, that it became the dominant theological framework in most of the world, certainly in the world that I inhabit, that does not mean that it's more true. It means that it's a better tool. It means it's a better technology for that system, for those systems. Those are very different things. We tend to assume that the theology that dominates must be the true one that best describes reality. That's definitely not true. Ancestor theologies definitely are better at actually describing how human societies work. But monotheism is the one that best organizes strangers to work together on large scales. But ancestor theologies don't have the same holes that monotheism has. The dead persist through their impact. That impact is real, but it is limited. The ancestor community contains wisdom and it contains darkness. It is both good and evil. It is not going to fix everything. Chaos will still be a part of life. Chaos makes sense because life is chaotic, not because God has like a plan that just happens to feel like chaos when you look at it close up. And continued existence depends on your impacts being remembered and being sustained, and eventually that fades as it is diluted. All of those things have metaphorical reflections in reality. I feel very weird right now. Anyway, the end. You should not worship StarClan. That's not the case I'm making. I am making a not that strong a case, but a fairly strong case that a children's book series about cats maybe stumbled onto or deliberately constructed or was aware enough of theology, the history of theology, to construct a theological framework that to me feels more honest and internally consistent than the one that I was raised inside of. And in addition to that, more reflective of actual human experience. The dead guide us. Their power is limited. Their legacy is dark and it is light. And they really do fade. That is a more coherent spirituality. It's just a true thing about the relationship between the living and the dead. And I don't think that we're going to head back to an ancestor theology. But I do think that humanism, whatever that is, has more in common with ancestor theology than it does with the current state of monotheism. And when I say more, I mean maybe a lot. That's interesting.